Greetings, everyone. Let's get dangerous.
This is so cool.
I know.
It feels so right.
It's Jake Ciely.
Opening our minds to new ideas. Kill him!
Who is that guy?
Your mama. You just made the list.
Oh, wait, you're serious? Let me laugh even harder.
It's all in fantasy. Things of the ranks.
Sure, we talk about it all the time. Really? No. Burn.
Game on, you ducks. It is All in Fantasy Week 5 fantasy football rankings to get you ready to hopefully get some wins if you don't have them, or continue the wins if you do. Keep that undefeated team going because we know you're probably out in Survivor. Everybody is. Nobody's left. The season's already over. We're going to go through a little bit different. Give us your feedback as you have with the wraparound show, the speed run that I do. We're going to kind of take this a different approach this week and kind of do game by game, kind of speed running the games, so to speak. If we're going to get these in 45 minutes, we're going to have to do that. So ready for week 5. And meaning normally I would kind of like toss off an overarching question to start, but I think tackling Thursday Night Football quickly because, I mean, you can skip past this. We'll put the timestamps in there, but I think this kind of hits the overarching question is Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, and Baker Mayfield in this game. Are we starting all of them over Anthony Richardson and Patrick Mahomes? Like, have we reached that point where both those quarterbacks deserve to be behind those three, despite the fact that one of them is facing the Jets this week?
Yeah, Darnold's the only one that I don't have ahead of Patrick Mahomes, but the others, yeah, no question. And we were both down on Anthony Richardson. Yeah, I still have Anthony Richardson as like quarterback 16. So last week I had him, we both had him 17, 18. Yeah, absolutely.
We had him too high.
Yeah, it was a better start. He had a decent start against Pittsburgh, but I'm not buying into Anthony Richardson. He's not running as much. He has not been accurate at all. So no, I would play the other guys over him. I'm a little. Sam's gotten his flowers this week. You know, he leads the NFL in touchdowns. He's second in yards per attempt. He's been very accurate, super efficient. But this is maybe a down game for him against the Jets. I wouldn't play him this week unless you're in a super flex spot.
I mean, you are, but I have him one spot in front of Patrick Mahomes. I mean,
yeah.
Look, it's the Jets, and we're going to talk about a lot of these games, but I mean, it's the Jets. It is at home, like whatever. The Jets are going to be able to stop anybody. But at what point do we like ignore the fact that it's Sam Darnold with Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and this offense, and the fact that Jordan Addison was even 100% and immediately comes out firing, mostly because of this offense and Sam Darnold. What has Patrick Mahomes done? Nothing. Like
nothing.
He's not even a QB1. He's like, does he even have a QB1 to finish?
He's got like a bunch of 15-point showings. I looked at him today as like to give to our guy Jay Felicio as
14, 14, 15, 17. He's got 15, 15, 17, 14 in points. So there's basically between 14 and 17 in points and 14 and 17 in his QB finish. And now he doesn't have Rashee Rice. Like I think that this is legitimately something to be concerned about, which go ahead.
I was just saying, like, I agree, like, moving forward, I think there may be better options all year long than Patrick Mahomes. And I was just to say, like, when I was given sits for Felicio, I wouldn't buy low.
Okay.
But I would consider it in a super flex league. I'll say that. Like, if you're hurting at the quarterback spot, I would consider buying low for him in super flex. But I don't know about a single quarterback league. There's some better options. They're going to make a move, though. Whether that's Devontae Adams or not, they're going to bring in a wide receiver.
I know, but what if it's somebody just like Darius Slayton, who I threw out, where you get for nothing? Like that's what.
Then it wouldn't be good. But if it was like Adams or Cooper, like we'd feel better.
It wouldn't be good, and I'm not saying like I don't want to promote. Well, actually, that's not fair. I do love promoting Giants players. I just don't love the Giants organization. Is Darius Slayton led this team in 5 to 6 years in receiving with what they've been dealing with, and I know it's only like the 800 yards and change, and 700 yards and change, but I mean it's like. It's not like he's a non-factor. Like I think on the Chiefs, he would help that offense. It just wouldn't be for us in fantasy. It wouldn't be like, oh my God, it's so much better because he has Devontae Adams. Like that's the comparison there. So then let me put it this way: would you in a super flex league the upside ceiling of said player versus Patrick Mahomes, who would you? I know you don't have to make this trade, but I don't know. Somebody might see this as a potential. I'm going to push for the ceiling and the name and buy low on Mahomes, but like I think it's just a general toss-up. Would you rather hold Caleb Williams for a ceiling, or go get Patrick Mahomes right now? Like just straight up, which would you rather have? I think it's a fair question.
It is a fair question. Not really liking what I'm seeing from Shane Waldron as the play caller in Chicago.
Oh my
I would
God.
just go.
You sent me that tweet. You sent me that tweet with the how bad it was with the JSN routes versus the DJ Moore routes.
Yeah, it's like JSN talk. We chatted about Ryan Grubb in the offseason, and JSN was talking about they were doing different things. You started to hear this with certain wide receivers, new offensive coordinators came in, Devontae Smith with Kellen Moore and stuff. Just like, hey, we're running a lot of motion, and that's happening in the NFL. But yeah, it's the route running from DJ Moore, the play calling, the offensive line. So I think I would just stay with Mahomes. The weapons are certainly better for Caleb Williams, and it's going to get better for him. But yeah, just give me Mahomes there.
All right. So
Man.
Bucks at Falcons, they're kind of in the book there because most people listening to this will probably have figured it out at that point. Plus, you know who to play, except for the one answer might be, are you benching Kyle Pitts? Hey, here's my answer. I'll give you mine and just see if you agree. Everybody keeps saying, do you bench Kyle Pitts? Do you drop Kyle Pitts for Conklin or Zach Ertz or, either further down the list, just some like randoms. And I'm just
No.
like, is this it? And that's my same answer because I'm like, yeah, but what? They're not any different than Kyle Pitts. Like,
Right.
That's the life of these tight ends. These tight ends, now granted, we didn't want Kyle Pitts to be in that bucket, but he's in the same bucket of, this is what I always say, like, if you want to, go ahead. But I would say if you do, stick with who you picked up. Like, because this is what the problem is. You're chasing the production. So you're chasing who did something last week. Like this game, Cade Otton. I'm not saying Cade Otton can't keep doing well because there is no McMillan and Trey Palmer right now. So he's kind of become the third option. Finally, I know Meaney's especially happy, but we're both happy for that one. But like, let's say you're chasing Cade Otton for 2 weeks and he has a down game and then Pitts has a good game. And now you're like, well, I should have stuck with Pitts. And then you go back to Pitts and they switch next week. And then neither of them do well. And you're just constantly chasing all year long. So just realize tight end is what tight end is. We're not going to have the whole conversation. It's funny. I actually had somebody in the comments at The Athletic. Surprising, pretty much argumentative happiness. Like, we argued. He was like, I hate that you want to get rid of tight end. And I was like, no, I'm not saying get rid of tight end. I'm saying wide receiver / tight end. And he's like, everybody's just going to be slamming wide receivers. I'm like, no, if you didn't listen to the context, there's more behind it. He's still proponent, very much heavy, wants the tight ends. Cool, play how you want to play. I'm actually really happy. Like, he's like at the end, he's like, appreciate the Discord. Like argued both sides. We didn't come to an agreement. We don't always have to come to an agreement.
No.
And we moved on.
Yeah.
Just my point being is, especially like people are going to be seeing it right now with the bye weeks. It's going to get as ugly as it possibly. Like, everybody is going to be chasing the Whitehursts of the world, hoping to get 12 yards and a touchdown. But here's the one I want to ask you about. This is funny because I thought that sitting in second place in one of my leagues, I was like, it's a keeper league, and Garrett Wilson is in the teens for price. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can package him to go up and get somebody like has a team that Justin Jefferson, who's already out of it, 0-6. Oh, or no, 1-7. Yeah, they have one tiebreak win or over the median. Which, by the way, please play double headers. As somebody's like, I'm the second highest scorer and I'm 1-3 or 4. What the hell week is 1-3? I can't. Yeah. I'm already broken. Anyway, and the perception I got back, they're like, no, Garrett Wilson's a wide receiver 3. I was like, are you out of your damn mind? Like, I'm super low on Garrett Wilson to start the year comparatively to everybody else, but I still had him as wide receiver 2. It's like the talent's the talent. It's the consensus ADP was wide receiver 8 because everybody knows the talent. Now, we talked about Shane Waldron, meaning this is where I'm going with all of this. Garrett Wilson complained about his routes. He said he's not running the same routes as he was the first 2 years, and there's something off with the offense. I'm paraphrasing that part of it. Where do you value Garrett Wilson? Like, is Garrett Wilson no longer a must start? And is he a wide receiver 2 or is he a wide receiver 3 for you?
He's a 2.
Okay.
Maybe more to the low end to the high end. We talked on Sirius about some of the matchups moving forward for him. There's some tough corners that he's going to have to face, and he's already faced a couple tough corners so far this year. And it's not what we thought or what I think most people thought when Rodgers would just pepper him. You know, like he's had so many targets over the past couple of years of the poor quarterback play, but he hasn't really had to deal with Alan Lazard, or now you have Mike Williams, or really just anybody else, because the other quarterback couldn't get the ball to anyone else and was just feeding Garrett Wilson. But now you have Rodgers, who doesn't look great, but he is spreading it around. He's not just going to sit there and force feed Garrett Wilson when he has other options, and he has two running backs that are
backfield
that are catching. Yeah. So I think that this team will start to lean on the run, and I view them as like, when they get into playoffs or must-win situations, they will be more run-heavy than pass-happy, even with Aaron Rodgers. And I look long-term dynasty, I think he's a good buy low. But yeah, you just have to reevaluate and adjust. Like, what does the future hold in New York with we can in 2 years?
Hopefully we're talking a different quarterback next year.
Same thing. Yeah, absolutely. But in 2 years, we could be talking about the same thing. Like, oh, Garrett Wilson's getting a lot of targets, but the quarterback play is really bad. But I'd say, like, off the top of my head, dynasty rankings, wide receivers, I would say he's like in the 15 to 18 range.
Let me give you a toss-up for redraft only. Stephon Diggs or Garrett Wilson now that Tank Dell's coming back?
I would go with Wilson, but I think that's good.
Diggs has almost 4.8 more points per game so far than Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
Just a real quick
touchdowns, right?
Garrett Wilson is wide receiver 41 in points per game because you include Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp with their injuries. Just regular points per games in 4 games played higher than Garrett Wilson. Darnell Mooney, Ladd McConkey, Trey Tucker, Quentin Johnston, Jalen Naylor, Wan'Dale Robinson, Alec Pierce, even with because of his giant week 1, these are more points per game. And granted, it's 4, so the Alec Pierce one is skewed. Quentin Johnston is a little skewed with the touchdown game, but I mean, it's as bad as the person was making it out to be, and I think it's a worthy conversation to have. I'm still buying low. I'm with you. I don't disagree, but maybe you wait till after this game too because it's the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean,
I
think
who
his
the Giants
maybe
who the
better
Jets have next.
Well, they have Buffalo and Pittsburgh after that, and those two teams have just locked down wide receivers. So I actually think this
maybe he's a sell.
Okay,
while he still has his name
on the name value alone, he's yet to top 60 yards. If I would consider buying him if you needed wide receiver help. But again, you just need to adjust and reevaluate. Even if you viewed him as a top 12 wide receiver, just don't view him that way anymore. But this, Minnesota's given it up a little bit in the secondary, but at the same time, they've gotten after the quarterbacks, lead the NFL in sacks, lead the NFL in interceptions, and Rodgers hasn't looked good. So it could be an okay game for him this week, but I'm more concerned about the Bills and the Steelers because they have taken away wide receiver 1 so far this year.
Well, we do have to talk about the Bills shortly, and yes, they have. So Jets, Vikings, so we already talked about Sam Darnold too. So Panthers, Bears, and Andy Dalton against the Bears. I actually think I put him as my sleeper for this game because if you need quarterback help, obviously this is probably more super flex or maybe, Jalen Hurts, and we have buys now. But I watched Matthew Stafford, as you know, talked about it on did I talk about the recap show or did I talk about it on waivers? One of the two, or both, or maybe it was the Sirius XM show. I don't know. We do too many damn shows. Point being, Matthew Stafford peppered the living hell out of the short to intermediate over the middle of the field against the Bears. Well, Andy Dalton can play that same game. Andy Dalton has Deontay Johnson, and Xavier Legette not quite as much. Again, I told you he's a little bit quicker, a little bit better route runner. As in coming to the league, DK Metcalf has developed. But anyway, I'm just saying that to say a little bit of similarities to DK Metcalf, get downfield. But I could see that being an option here for Andy Dalton. And on the flip side, DeAndre Swift, I do have as a low-end RB2, but I do not feel good about it. Where are you on these two?
Yeah, Swift I have as a low-end RB2 as well. I probably feel a little bit better than you. I have him at 19. It's just there's 4 teams on bye and there's injuries and then the matchup, right? What we've just seen so far this year from Carolina is they're going to continue to give rushing touchdowns up and you can run on them. So yeah, it was an encouraging game for him last week. He also went up against a Rams team that can't stop anybody at the moment. But, and I'm thinking about Chicago. They want to get this right with Swift. Hey, man, we paid all this money for you. Herbert is clearly taken a backseat So I think that at least the opportunities are going to be there. And the one takeaway that I have from last week is those catches. He had 7 targets, 7 grabs. That's what he does best. If that continues, it's going to hurt Keenan and Rome Odunze. I mean, again, you're not getting anything from DJ Moore, really. But I would play Swift, given the situation. I have him just behind like Hunt, Stevenson, and Harris, and just ahead of Ford, Moss, and I have Devon Achane way down my rankings.
Do you have him in front of Achane?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I was super low on Achane. I have Achane at 21, but I still have Swift behind that. So
I'm at 22.
Similar names. I actually have Ford at 18, and that's kind of the run defense matchup, but also because this one could go sideways. Well, hold on, we'll get to that game. This is what happens. Get ahead. Hunt, Singletary, Achane, White, Moss, Swift, Dowdle, Javonte, Trey Sermon, Justice Hill, Bucky Irving. So same range, and behind quite a few names that like most weeks I'd want to start over him. So let's talk the next game. Ravens at perfect time. Ravens at Bengals. Sorry, I was looking at the clock. Perfect time, and nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about. That's great podcasting. I have Justice Hill's sleeper. Not a surprise there. I put this as my note. So far this year, there are 2 wide receivers, 2 with a minimum of 20 targets. So like regular use. 2 wide receivers don't have a single pass off target coming their way so far. One of them is Jamar Chase. The other one shot like Jamar Chase, like, okay, I could see that. The shocking one to me, the other receiver is Jackson Smith and Jigba. Not one target off target so far. But anyway, not to focus on that. I just want to throw that out as a fun little nugget.
That's pretty impressive.
So Chase Brown has 6.9 explosive runs compared to Zach Moss's 4.2. We saw Chase Brown last week. He's getting more work. Should we be concerned about Zach Moss against the Ravens, especially with Chase Brown getting more involved?
Yeah. Slightly, right? I have some Zach Moss. Again, context, you got to play him. I think you're given what the situation
you have
is.
Him behind Swift?
Yeah, I have Moss. I have Moss at 21, and I have Chase at 27. So I think he's worthy of a flex play. I think both of these guys, again, context dependent, but I don't love the spot this week. I don't even like the spot for Joe Burrow. Like I had Joe Burrow as a sip. Maybe I should have Patrick Mahomes as a sip, but with this Ravens defense, the past couple of games, they've looked better. Like you can, some of the numbers are skewed because Dak had all that garbage time stuff in that game a couple weeks ago, but they held him in check. You'll see what they did to Josh Allen last week as well. So I think this defense is going to step up against this Bengals squad. You're still playing Chase. I'd say you're still playing T. Higgins, but what we saw last week was Chase Brown. Again, we've kind of said this, like he's going to look better than Zach Moss, but I don't think Zach Moss is fully going to go anywhere. And what I noticed in that game last week against Carolina, he was kind of like the closer. He was kind of playing like the David Montgomery role where he was closing out the game. They were trusting him, but Chase was having a lot of nice runs. But Moss is catching passes, which is something I didn't really think that he would do a whole lot of this year. I thought it would be like Chase Brown. So that's what makes him for me like a low on RB2 and ahead of Chase.
Okay.
But who's getting the goal line touches? Because Chase Brown got him last week. That was surprising.
I chuckle at that, but that's worth watching too because it's similar to the Bucky Irving situation. Is that if you're going to start losing that, Braylon Allen too, all 3 of them. So
right,
Breece Hall, Braylon Allen problem. Chase Brown is a problem for potentially Zach Moss, and then also Bucky Irving has been a problem for Rachaad White. All 3 of them before Week 4 weren't getting the value touches. Not a lot of passing game work, some for Chase Brown, but not a lot for any of the 3. And then none of the 3 were really getting any goal line work. Braylon Allen isn't getting any still. That might change this week. We can talk about the Jets. But you just mentioned it. Chase Brown got some. Bucky Irving got some. So we're going to be looking at like all 3, basically in that Tyler Algier conversation. So Miami and the Patriots for the next game. You know what? I think you say context dependent all the time, and I know people are frustrated with the last 2 games, but I think you could put Ramondre Stevenson in this week. I actually have him as a top 20 running back against the Dolphins. Okay, so the Dolphins are tied for the second highest missed tackles forced per attempt behind only the Giants. That's how bad their run defense has been so far. And we know on the flip side, too, Patriots have no problem running the ball and keeping the run game as controlling the game. And if the Dolphins offense continues to not be able to do anything with Tyler Huntley, which, oh my God, do you know how bad this is? Look at this. I pulled this up. So the entire history of Tyreek Hill with the Dolphins, these numbers are insane. So the Dolphins with Tua and Tyreek, EPA drop back 0.15. Without him, minus 0.21. 6.5 yards per play versus 4.8. 8.8 yards per target versus 6.7. And 5.5 touchdowns per attempt versus 2.3. Basically, if you sort by teams and you go through all these numbers, this is the difference between being a top 5 offense and a bottom 5 offense.
Yeah, like I put a lot of blame on the Miami organization. I really do. And it's tough to see an injury coming, but you have to be more prepared for this. You had to have had a capable backup. Honestly, like you're spending all that money on Tua. He had a season with 3 concussions in one season. And everybody knew that if he took one more hit, his career just could straight up be over. I just would have thought about this a whole lot differently if I was a GM. I would have had a capable backup. Like, seriously, how hard could it have been to get an Andy Dalton, to get a Joe Flacco was free to pick up, like all these like quarterbacks, veteran quarterbacks. Anyways, Ramondre I would play. I wouldn't play anyone else. Tyreek Hill, I honestly wouldn't play him. I don't think I'm going to play him in your flex league this week. And my options are limited, but like I don't know. I may play Tyler Lockett over him.
I have Tyreek Hill down. Well, to give you context of where he is, I have him sandwiched in between a bunch of guys like Xavier Worthy, Smith and Jigba, Wicks, Downs, Kirk, Tutu Atwell. That's the names he's with for me, which I think tells you all you really actually need to know.
Yeah, same. Like we're talking about Dontavian Wicks over him this week, JSN over him. Why not just give me Xavier Worthy? He's going to be like boomer bust.
I would take Xavier Worthy, but I would take him. I would take him over Mooney because that's how I'm. See, this is how I'm viewing Tyreek Hill. You get the ball in his hands 3 times, there's a chance he takes one for 40 yards, even if it's after the catch. So that's why it's like, but where he is the Moonies, the Suttons, the Judys. That's where he is.
Yeah, and Gonzalez is going to probably just lock him down, and Huntley didn't show me anything in that game against the Titans. It was his first game, but like it looked like his first game ever, Jake. Like the first play he throws behind, Tyreek Hill. Like
I tongue-in-cheek said, give him 50% of the playbook, and it's better than Skylar Thompson. And that's what they did. It wasn't the full playbook, and it wasn't better than Skylar Thompson, though. That's the problem. So, like, maybe Tyler Huntley needs more than 50% of the playbook. That's so. I'm just saying.
We're definitely not starting Waddle. That's for sure.
No. And watch Jalen Waddle go for like 80 and 2 touchdowns because feet's ball. That's what we do.
The total's 35, and I would lean under if it was 25. I really just I watched Miami and Tennessee play, and I just there was nothing happening in that game, and I just don't feel like a whole lot will happen in this. New England hasn't shown us that they can move the ball. You're spot on about Stevenson. I think he's a great play. I think he's going to touch the ball like 20, 25 times in this game. And on the other side, they're probably just going to run the football too because they can't move it through the air.
You said when I joked about the rain, I had my suggestion that I got from somebody this week was the top 10 weathers. So what's your number one weather? My number one was sunny and cloudy around 70 degrees. Just kind of like that nice, relaxing. You can do anything. You could go to the beach because it's still kind of warm enough. You could go golfing, but it's not like you're going to sweat. You could hang out back and have a cookout. Number 2 is full snow. But what's your number one weather?
I'm surprised you'd have full snow. I'm with you on the 70 degrees. That's nice. It's not too hot. You're not sweating. You can do everything. You can just hang outside and it's not like I can't be out here anymore for 5 minutes. So I love a good snowfall. I mean, I'm north of much north of you, so I see a lot of it. But yeah, I'm
well. There's a difference.
I love a good.
I said full snow at 2. Heavy ass snow is 6. There's a difference. Like full snow is just like that quality snow. You can throw some snowballs, whatever, like that. Heavy ass snow is like things are shut down for like a day or 2. I would take that. Also, I would take that depending on my state because in Virginia. We're shut down for like 3 weeks because we don't have the ability to plow that stuff. But you know what? I'm going to move on from this, but I think 7 is underrated. I put light fog Like that cool evening light fog that because you don't get it often. And it's just that cool kind of like, now not so heavy that you can't even see 2 feet in front of you, but that just kind of like the moon is kind of like bouncing off of it and kind of gives that like Halloween-y vibes and
it's spooky. We get we get heavy fog, but in the morning, like right by the ocean, so we get a lot of the fog in the morning where you cannot see. But yeah, you go to the golf course in the morning, and it's like, holy crap, I can't even see the fairway in the first 2 holes, and then it's kind of like hanging, it goes away. Yeah, it just hangs. But yeah.
So all right, moving on. Colts Jaguars. I love some Josh Downs. You know that I don't care whether or not it is Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco. The interesting thing is I actually pulled up those numbers. It was kind of leaning into what I said, is that Downs is very similar in production, just different ways with and without Flacco. The real crutch here comes to Michael Pittman. But on the Jaguar side of where I wanted to go with this, the Jaguars starting Brian Thomas probably at this point. Yeah. Are you throwing out Christian Kirk in this matchup? Or are you worried? Actually, 2 questions. You're throwing out Christian Kirk in this matchup as a blank, and then do you have concerns about ETN? We talked about him on the waiver show, but now going against the Colts, this should be like a get-right spot, correct?
Yeah, it should be. But if he doesn't get right, then my concern level would be higher. Like, I'd give him a duck at the moment. And if he
lays an egg, you're going to give him 4?
if he lays an egg, I'd think at least another one, maybe 2. Like if I see another explosive run from Tank Bigsby and he gets 10 carries in this game, we should all be concerned, because ETN has not gotten going yet. He is getting the catches, but Doug Peterson is on the hot seat, and like I told you, he needs to find W's, find ways to win, and maybe just lean on different players if it's just not going to happen for ETN. So Tank Bigsby's got a couple decent runs. I was looking at the Jags, and they're like among the leaders in yards per carry. And I'm like, wait, how? And it's just because Tank Bigsby has like 2 massive runs.
Yeah.
As for Brian Thomas, I'm just playing him every week, and he's got that touchdown upside. I don't have him ranked too aggressively. I have him like high 30s, but he is ahead of Christian Kirk. This matchup should be good for everyone in this game, to be honest. Like Jags and Colts, neither of these teams have shown us that they can stop anybody. The Jags are giving up a ton through the air. I think the second most receiving yards to wideouts. This is a top matchup. Whoever, do you know yet if it doesn't sound like Richardson's playing, but there's a possibility. I would feel better about both.
It sounded like the opposite.
That he's out?
No, that he is playing. I thought it was
that
opposite.
He is playing. Okay.
Yeah, I actually think there's more of a chance, it sounds like, that Anthony Richardson does than Jonathan Taylor does.
Yeah.
Like the Jonathan Taylor one's weird. Like that we're not getting like any news on this. Like legitimately in the game, doesn't return, said a mild high ankle afterwards, which means at least a game or 2.
Yeah.
And there's been nothing. But of course, we'll probably finish this podcast, be like, Jonathan Taylor's out. Watch when he gets slapped on IR. So real quickly before we move on from this game, no Jonathan Taylor, Trey Sermon. This is Cam Akers, right? That's the easiest way to tell everybody what it is. And to give you an idea where I have him sandwiched at 27 between Javonte Williams and Justice Hill. So he's basically the last full-time starter, but there's actually, as you can do the math, there's a few names actually in front of him as well. And then ahead of timeshares of Justice Hill, Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, Austin Eckler, Charbonnet, and I wouldn't be surprised if he falls behind a couple of those.
Yeah, I have him at 27 too. I do have Bucky ahead of him and Chase Brown ahead of him. But yeah, I could see myself, maybe moving Justice Hill up a spot. Javonte Williams is in a good spot, but he hasn't shown us a whole lot. You're right. It's Cam Akers, right? It's maybe he gets a ton of touches, but he's not super efficient with those touches. You just hope he scores a touchdown. And I think his ceiling is like low in RB2.
There we go. I'll fix my camera live on the show. That's also great for podcasting. I noticed because my wife made this. I have to lower it. There's a freaking skeleton thing hanging here because it's October.
I can only see the legs. Yeah, I didn't even notice that. Now
I know because it's just like kind of it's just hanging around this time in the All right, you know what time it is?
Love October.
You know what time it is?
I don't know what time it is. No,
it's revenge time. Stephon Diggs, revenge at home against his Bills.
He's definitely scored a touchdown this week.
You think so? You think CJ Stroud's going to throw the ball his way 15 times until he gets it? Sidebar here. this game, look, you know who to start on both sides. You're starting Khalil Shakir, you're starting Kincaid, you're starting James Cook, Texans, you're starting all of them. Tank Dell, if he plays, home run play at this point. You understand, like, again, not the victory lap, but I just want to remind everybody that we keep saying this. Stop chasing third wide receivers for consistent production. Understand what you're getting into. Like, Jackson Smith-Njigba now has 2 good games, but so did Lockett. Both of them had a good game. You're going to get some of those where they both have a good game. One doesn't, one, that type of thing. Tyler Boyd, I keep using him all the time. His best season playing with Chase and Higgins was like wide receiver 40, and you just have to understand that. Anyway, on the sidebar here, does Nico Collins deserve to have his name in tier 1 of wide receivers at this point?
Yeah, he's my wide receiver 2 this week, and I understand there's a lot of injuries, and there's some good wide receivers that are on bye. You got him at 1?
I have him 1.
Wow, nice. Yeah, I mean
Jefferson, Jets. Who do you have 1?
I have CD 1.
CD
and
1?
I know. Yeah, and I
have CD
get
down to
Pittsburgh
6.
and Porter.
Well, okay, so here's how I go. So I go Collins, Jefferson, Neighbors, Chase, Metcalf, Lamb. Nitpicky again, like Chase against Baltimore, you could be like, he should deserve to be 6, and you might have talked me into that, but I guess that's my big 6.
I have the same order. I mean, I have the same 6.
Same 6.
I have CD, Nico, Neighbors, Chase, Jefferson, DK. So I'm a little down on Jefferson. I've just seen good quarterbacks against the Jets over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Josh Allen looks silly. Jalen Hurts looks silly. Mahomes looks silly. So anyways, like you're playing
Sam
him.
Darnold hasn't faced him.
You're going to have the sauce on him.
By the way, Sam Darnold revenge.
Yeah.
I mean, revenge week.
Some of these guys do have tough matchups. Like Jefferson has a tough matchup. Chase has a tough matchup. CD has a tough matchup. They're just, with the Dak and the Cowboys, the Dak, man, just like not running the football, not even really trying to run the football. And I don't think they're going to have a lot of success. So yeah, I understand with CD, is Porter going to follow him around? We'll see. They can move CD around. I'll just lean with him, given the situation with Dak, but I'm not going to fight you on Nico wide receiver 1. Like the guy is
the fact that he
every
deserves to be in that
week.
tier. Yeah.
And it's his prop every week too, for people that care about props. I mean, it's in the 70s, and this guy's hitting the century mark every week.
To come back to it, are you with me in considering Stephon Diggs as a sell high? Relative. I mean, just because the Tank Dell could be the similar situation to Tyler Lockett, is you're going to get a few now down games because of and maybe you do it after this game. But so the one thing I wanted to ask you about to come back to, or wait, we haven't talked. Did we talk Commanders yet? No, we haven't.
No.
Did we?
No.
Yeah, we did. Because we talked about the Browns game, but we didn't talk about the Commanders.
I don't remember talking Browns at all. We just kind of mentioned Ford in our
blew
rankings.
right past them.
Yeah.
Okay.
We didn't talk.
That's a fail on me. I skipped right past that game. All right. Browns and Commanders, everybody.
QB1, Jaden Daniels.
Let me put the new timestamp here as I completely screwed that up. Screwed the pooch, as they would say. So I want to loop Diggs into this because I'm glad I thought of this. So Diggs is a sell high relative, but there's a risk you run. So this is what I'm bringing up and saying this comparison.
You want to trade him for Murray?
No. I'm just talking about in general. So Stephon Diggs, a sell high. Jaden Daniels and Brian Robinson and Terry McLaurin, arguably, are all sell highs. Of course, context. What can you get? You're not selling Jaden Daniels unless somebody is treating him as a top 2 quarterback. And then you get help, and you don't just sell him off just to get rid of him. Like, you're not trading him for, you don't sell him for Patrick Mahomes, but, if you get help for your team. Brian Robinson has Austin Eckler coming back this week. Is he an RB1? Probably not. But is he a top 20? Definitively, yes. Maybe even top 15. So context again. Terry McLaurin, I brought this up on the waiver show. A little bit of concern with the fact that he was being rotated off the field and wasn't 90% snaps anymore. Again, could be one thing. This is actually, it looks bad because it's the Browns, but for Terry McLaurin, this is actually a positive matchup. And this is where I'm going with my whole long-winded comparison for Stephon Diggs to say this. So Terry McLaurin, by the way, leads the NFL in team air yards, 56.9% of his team's air yards. That is insane. Number 2 is George Pickens at 53.5. Malik Neighbors is 51.5. Malik Neighbors is at 51.5 to kind of give you an idea of how crazy it is for McLaurin right now. He is actually really good against man coverage, that being McLaurin. 2.22 yards per route run. Additionally, first read, 18th in the league. And Jaden Daniels throws to his first read 71% of the time, and the Browns give up a lot. 2 first reads. I went deep dive in this to see if McLaurin was a good play. Here's my question when I say all of this. Do you, Chris Meaney, as the manager of a Stephon Diggs, as the manager of a Jaden Daniels, as the manager of a Terry McLaurin, so this is two different type of games. Do you try to sell high and say, what if Diggs has a bad game in a good spot and I lose my sell high opportunity? And then at the same token, do I sell high in Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, and whatever in a bad spot? And then what if they go off and I could have even gotten more? You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, it's the whole bird in the hand, two in the bush type of thing. Like, how do you treat these scenarios when you're thinking sell highs? Because I think this is a good conversation to kind of pause in our rank show and talk about.
Yeah, it's difficult because you can project it going the other way, like you mentioned. As for Jaden Daniels selling high, the only way that I would sell high on Jaden Daniels is if I was getting, say, a Lamar, a Jalen Hurts, a Josh Allen, and something straight up. Like, I want something else.
That's the point.
Yeah, you want something else to help out my squad. I don't think that I would do anything like a Burrow or a Kyler.
Here, I got one for you.
If I did a Burrow or Kyler, I definitely would need something back,
Well,
like a wide receiver.
That's Burrow was actually. I was actually say, would you go Burrow and Garrett Wilson for Jaden Daniels?
Yeah, that
And
would be.
so that's the context I'm giving.
Yeah.
Okay, but again, to go back to the question, do you like try to hold off before?
I try to,
because if they face plant this week, you're obviously losing value. If Stephon Diggs, face plants in a good spot, you're losing potential value. If they go off against a good team, Stephon Diggs has another good game, it's like, oh man, if I would have waited, I could have gotten even more. So kind of how is it really just that? It's that you need the proper trade?
for sure. If I really want to move a guy and I want to sell a guy, I would do it before the tough matchup.
Okay.
I would just, yeah. If that's in my head, like I want to get rid of him and I have an offer on the table that I like, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do that, because anything can happen, even in a good matchup. Like he could be up against whoever, like Carolina, and just not have a good game, and then the values is going to change. So he has a good game. What else are you going to get? It's so tough to find a trade partner where, like, okay, you have a trade lined up, but you want to wait and see how this game goes, and then it goes better. Then, are you going to get something better for that manager that you already had to deal with? Probably not. You already have that deal in place, and then you got to try to find another trade partner in your league. So I make the move. If I want to sell high on a certain player, I make the move. And I want to keep Terry, actually. Like, understand making him available. It's crazy, his air yard share. I looked at week 1, it was like non-existent, of course, because he didn't have any targets week 2. And then all of a sudden week 3, in that game against the Bengals, he had the 56%. It's just like, wow. Because this team is playing at a slow pace, one of the slowest paces in all of football. And the ADOT has improved for Jaden Daniels. But it's still, it's not dink and dunk, but they're running the football.
It's
pretty
Shaheed too. Like, he doesn't come down with one of those. And
Right.
granted, that is beautiful, but like that,
It
the
is.
big play over the shoulder into the right into the end zone. I mean, that doesn't come down. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, okay, It was a good game, not an amazing game.
Yeah.
All right.
He's not getting as much volume as we thought in catches, but he is scoring those touchdowns that we were asking for, right? Because he's been stuck at 5, which has kind of been why he's been
now,
stuck.
he's kind of like on the Cortland Sutton 2023 pace.
Right.
Like,
now he's getting
like
the touchdowns with the
800
volume
yards
isn't
and
really
10
there.
touchdowns.
So I don't know if he's going to be higher than a wide receiver too because of that, right? He's just he's not going to get a ton of catches.
Did you, Chris Meaney, take your Pepto this morning? Because Raiders at Broncos.
Next.
You know what I put for the sleeper in this game? Broncos defense.
I was going to say, who did you put? You didn't put Tucker. I mean, Tucker, I guess, maybe, but
No. You want to? I'll get here. The only thing I'll give you out of this game, you probably somebody has to start Javonte. Somebody has to start Cortland Sutton. Please don't start Zamir White. Trey Tucker. Like Trey Tucker.
That's what I mean, Tucker.
If somebody asked me and they said if Devontae Adams was traded off this team, where would Tucker? And I was like, he'd be like a wide receiver 3, kind of 3-4 in that. Last year, Jacoby Myers, and now he's the better Jacoby Myers at that point.
Would you him more than Myers if that trade does happen and
Yes.
Adams is gone?
Yeah, just because quarterback style is a little bit different.
I wonder if Cortland Sutton will be on Myers this week, which is just
So he's the interesting
This is
stat. You want
lockdown
to hear
mode.
something crazy? Cortland Sutton, just like last year, he didn't last year, but similar to last year, He's the only wide receiver in the NFL with 100% of his team's end zone targets. He's the only one. Yeah. Next closest, Nico Collins at 78%, by the way. So, moving on. Next game, as we quickly get the hell away from that nonsense. Cardinals at 49ers. I asked you this yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this show. I asked you about Kyler Murray, and I said, is it time to stop being excited about Kyler Murray because of his finishes? He has one QB1 finish. He also gets the 49ers, who have historically kind of been frustrating for Kyler Murray. Likely has Trey McBride back, but it's Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison the end. And I say the end as in, I don't even want to start Kyler Murray in this game. And if it wasn't for the fact that Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison are Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison, I'd be hesitant about them. To give you an idea, let's go back to quarterback. Kyler Murray is sitting down at barely QB1, one spot in front of Sam Darnold. This is what I hate, that I don't really want to start Sam Darnold against the Jets. And we already talked about the Patrick Mahomes conundrum, but just in front of him is like Joe Burrow versus Baltimore, Kyler Murray, San Francisco. Like, honestly, I don't want to start any of the three. But it's kind of like you're almost like, are you going to drop all the way down to Dak against the Steelers, Trevor Lawrence against the Colts? Like, this is a tough quarterback week, actually, when you think about it.
It is. It's a very tough quarterback week. I picked up Ciely in a couple leagues this week. I didn't want to spend any
Geno
fab.
8.
Yeah, I have Geno high too, and I don't think the pass attempts. I mean, he's leading the NFL in pass attempts, and the pass percentage is high. We've talked a lot about that heading into the season, and Ryan Grubb. But yeah, I mean, it's against the Giants. So I felt, I picked up Tila in a couple spots this morning, but I didn't want to put any like fabs or bids on him because nobody will. But like he's in a decent spot this week against the Colts.
Did you accidentally win him?
It's funny, the Sirius XM host league, I was going to pick him up because I had Jalen and I was like trying to plan ahead. And I'm like, man, I can't pick up Tila like Sunday morning. Just like, I don't want anybody to see like me actually picking up this guy who's been so brutal. I'm just going to get him for free next week and this is exactly what happened. I just picked him up this morning.
You know what Meaney is? You know what you are? You remember like old Blockbuster? You're the dude that's trying to like sneak into like the bad videos and like not have anybody see them. You're just like, I'm just gonna kind of. I wandered over here and I got Trevor Lawrence.
It's like, T-Law's there. Should I get him now and prepare? Because that's what I was doing with Jalen Hurts and Jared Goff. I was like,
he's on the front of the box doing the George Costanza. Like, look at Trevor Lawrence.
Look what do we got here? Sneaking in the underneath the jacket.
Switch the case with something else with the video. Like, so you're like, no, I'm really renting like Bridget Jones' Diary.
Oh man, it felt gross. But like, you got to plan ahead. Like for anybody that has quarterbacks on bye next week, you want to try to beat to the waiver wire. But I knew nobody would be putting bids in on any T-Law or anything. But the matchups are tough for a lot of guys, and Dak as well, right? Against Prescott or against the Steelers defense. So I'm Kyler. I mean, the spot is not great. The one thing I will say, despite last week, is he has been running. Brought that up with you, 57, 59, 45. That's like kind of. I mean, he's not going to average 40 rushing yards a game. I don't think it'd be close, but it's not early Kyler, but it's closer to early Kyler than late with the legs. But I don't even know if I really view him as a buy low because, the Packers are an okay spot next week, but the Chargers, the Dolphins, the Bears, the Jets, it's a tough stretch for him. Then he gets the bye. Out of the bye week 11 on, from week 12 on, the matchups are actually decent for him. But given this week, you have Kyler. I think you play Kyler.
Okay. I think that fact that he's a QB1 still, despite the fact I don't want to. Yeah,
even like Kerner and Marv are in tougher spots, but this is as low as I've ranked Marv since week 2, I think. But I still have him as a wide receiver. 2. It's like 15? More of a 2. Yeah, in around there.
Okay. Packers, Rams. Tutu Atwell
Wheels
just didn't play at this point. I know. Whittington, this is like, I want to start Whittington, but I still only have him as like a wide receiver 3 or 4 just because I don't know that the Rams aren't playing this kind of rotational game depending on their matchups. But I think the interest for everybody else is more on the Packers side. Here's the interesting one. To go back to the whole end zone thing, how about Jaden Reed is the only top 10 wide receiver in the NFL without a red zone target?
And I don't think he'll have a whole lot.
So the interesting thing is between waivers and the ranks, I got a lot of people talking and like, oh man, why was everybody so far off in Jaden Reed? And we don't need to go down that deep dive. And it really came down to, I explained it in one of the comments, like it was a clear miss. We were reading, we were reading the room, and the fact that everything in every single report was all three are going to get equal potential share. That's the biggest takeaway. It has nothing to do with even like we talked about. He's third. He's coming off the field for 2 wide receiver sets. You and I both said he's still the highest talent. We just thought that meant the target share wouldn't be what it is, which is clearly Reed, like by far, even before with or without Watson. So not to go down that too much, but it comes down to the Dontavian Wicks part now too, is that said on the waiver show, if I knew Dontavian Wicks was the guy and not Watson, I would have ranked Reed, Wicks, Dobbs, and would have pushed them up. It was, again, more of a flat target share. Are you Wicks over Dobbs? Because I think that's the bigger question everybody's having right now. Dobbs is out there and has been out there 90% of the time. Wicks did have a bad drop, but Wicks has continued to prove in his opportunities he's got a really high ceiling. So where do you go with this? Because we know Reed is in the wide receiver one conversation. Is it Wicks or Dobbs for you?
This week it's Wicks, but I still like Dobbs. And
still like
a
him.
lot. And the two Packers that I have the most shares of is Wicks and Dobbs. Yeah, we were wrong about Reed, albeit it's only 2 games with Jordan Love. Like, let's not. I'm seeing Dobbs just straight up dropped. I saw Dobbs get dropped for Wicks. I've seen a lot of that, and I still think that Dobbs gonna be involved in this offense. Like, you can rewind the tape. Like, we liked him, the target share. He's on the field a lot, end zone targets, air yard share. He's leading the Packers in all of those categories. We did like Wicks, and I think the biggest thing for me is that as much as we didn't believe in Watson, he was still there on the field, and it's just another body. But I think him being gone does help Wicks. I think Romeo was just going to have a role altogether, regardless of Watson. Like, I liked him over Watson. If they're all together, the pecking order for me was Reed. Watson would have been fourth. He would have been right there with Wicks. It's like kind of like a gadget type play. There's going to be some highs and some lows. But now that the fact that he is just gone, I think it does open up for Dontavian Wicks. And I don't know what else to really say. If you guys listened yesterday, we were both talking about his route running ability. And he is set up to have some success in this offense with Jordan Love. I mean, boxes are not going to be stacked. I think the offense is going to get going now. Jacobs is going to get going as well. But I have Wicks ahead of Romeo Dobbs, but I have Wicks around wide receiver 25, and I have Romeo around wide receiver 31, 32. I think they're all in really good spots this week against the Rams. But yeah, Reed does seem. I wish I had more shares of Jaden Reed for sure, and I would make him available because I do think that this ball is going to get spread around. So after this week, would you be shocked if we're talking about Dobbs and Wicks having better games than Reed? That wouldn't surprise me.
No, but here's the good thing. So when Watson left the game, this is without Watson on the Packers, week 4. Again, now, reminder, we've seen multiple games. Whittington was one of them, and then he came back around last week. But we've seen games where things happen in-game is different than a full week of planning. So I'm not saying throw this out the window, but I'm just remember that as part of the context. So this is with no Watson leaving. Dobbs, 92% of the routes, as he has been. 86 and 86 tied, 44 routes each, was Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks. So they're both right there. Zero concern about Reed in that aspect. The interesting thing that we're bringing up, why the Wicks upside, and again, this just might have been a one-game scenario, the matchup that they faced. Team target percentage, 26 for Wicks, 16 for Dobbs, 16 for Kraft, 14 for Reed. I'm not saying that to eliminate Reed from it, and also he doesn't need as much, and they give him some run touches too, basically the Deebo Samuel for them. Just putting the perspective of, like, I think that's more about the fact of what you're saying is Dobbs isn't dead. Like, let's not bury Dobbs.
Yeah,
let's
he's
not
not.
drop Dobbs.
And you're going to be able to. He's going to be on the wire. You're going to see him on. He's already on.
I
the
wouldn't
wire.
be surprised if he's one of the most dropped wide
Right.
receivers.
And I think that's overreaction. I really do believe that would be an overreaction.
I'm looking at trends right now. Here, I'm pulling up Sleeper live on the show. Let's see. Number 1 drop, Carson Steele, not surprising. Cam Akers, Roshan Johnson, Yoshivas, Quentin Johnston on bye.
We call
Marcus, Gesicki, Andrews, Corum, Strange, Tyler. Well, maybe not.
The thing with him not being around the most dropped is he wasn't owned anyways. Like, he was in your column last week. We've been talking about his ownership being sub 60%.
That's touche, my friend.
So like people are just not. They haven't been.
So
interested.
he was actually quite dropped because he was in the 50% range. I know that because I was gonna. Hey, finally I could stop putting him in the damn column. He's down to 40% now on Yahoo. So he was quite dropped on Yahoo.
And he may garner like the top corners, but that may change where like teams may decide that they need to follow Reed around because in 2 games with Love, he's got nearly 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I look ahead at these schedules, like man, like if you hung on to Jordan Love, you were able to get Wicks or you can get Romeo. I look ahead, I see Arizona, Houston, Jacksonville, Detroit. Like it's just some really nice matchups for wide receivers and quarterbacks moving forward. It gets a little bit tougher after the bye, but then you get Detroit again week 14. So yeah, I'm pretty bullish on this Packers offense, and I do like it a little bit better when Watson's not around. Unfortunately,
and we have 2 Packers, the top 5 picked up players: Trey Sermon, Kareem Hunt 2, Wicks 3, Kraft 4, and Justice Hill is 5. So there you go. All right, so let's talk Giants Seahawks to finish wrapping up this show today. And this one was interesting. I have a lot of these little nuggets that I've been putting in the column. By the way, if Kenneth Walker doesn't go bananas on the Giants, I'm gonna be so aggravated after
going bananas against the Lions,
dude. Of all teams, teams. Like I had him as like a low end RB2 just because like first game back, Charbonnet was okay. They give him the full workload, and nobody in the world runs on the Lions except all of a sudden Kenneth Walker, and not just runs on them, goes bananas.
Yeah, the third touchdown, like leading up to that, was like okay, he looks awesome. The first couple, it looked like they held him in check early on. He had a couple touchdowns from the one.
Oh no, like, not just held at the beginning. He was in the teens of yards. Like he was doing nothing.
He was going to struggle. I mean, that's
all right.
That's what he does. He just all of a sudden randomly gets an explosive run and scores a touchdown.
Which is like the weird thing. We've talked about Kenneth Walker through past years if you've listened to us plenty. This is the interesting one. It's Wan'Dale Robinson. He leads the league with 53.7% of his team's targets on third down. Do you know what the next closest person is? 38.7. 15 percentage points lower. It's George Pickens, by the way. But Wan'Dale Robinson, I mean, you want to talk about the definition of a safety blanket. Is he in play? As crazy as is he in play as a wide receiver 3 and in play in full point PPR ahead of Tyreek Hill? This is where we're at right now, Meaney?
Yes.
I love that you just
like you know that I like him.
Oh yeah, I know.
I like Wan'Dale Robinson, and the ceiling is capped. Like it's crazy that we're comparing him and Tyreek Hill because we all know, everybody listening and watching, we all know that the ceiling is through the roof with Tyreek Hill. And
if he has 10 receptions, does he get 100 yards?
Wan'Dale Robinson? No. Yeah. We just saw it last week. We were live betting him at FTN. On the show on Sirius, we had over 4.5. We went to over 6.5. We went to over 8.5. I went as far as over 10.5 with like 10 to 7 minutes left in the game, thinking the Giants would have 1 to 2 more drives and that he would just get the ball. It was really just him and Malik Neighbors. So yeah, the ceiling is super low. I have him in a 16-team dynasty league where I've been playing him. It's a PPR league. He's been getting nearly double-digit points in a half-point setting. So I even made him available after the big game. I'm like, just see what I can get. Like, guys, he's gonna get 10 points every week in a PPR league. But then he's like, he's gonna get 35 yards. It's like, okay, it's not gonna score a lot of touchdowns, but he is safe. Yeah, and he's a good guy to have because of that floor. And you have some boomer bust wide receivers in there, Tank Dell and Worthy and Shaheed and JMO and some of these guys that won't be.
Well, here, I have a good one for you.
Yeah.
Next game, we're going to talk Cowboys at Steelers. Would you rather start in your flex Wan'Dale Robinson or Rico Dowdle?
I would rather start Wan'Dale Robinson. Yeah,
and I think that's I wasn't even, and the reason I brought that up a little bit too is because Rico Dowdle, there was talk, if anybody saw it this past week, that the Cowboys were basically saying we might be done with this whole committee experience. Because
they should be. Yeah.
Mostly because they should be done with Zeke, but the whole Lupke thing. But are you buying Dowdle if you can? Just hearing that news and the fact that we went to last year saying he was better on a per touch basis than Tony Pollard. He's been the best on a per touch basis again this year. But there's always the cautionary tale. The Lamar Millers of the world. Justice Hill, if he was a lead running back, I think would run into the same problem for everybody that keeps asking me why isn't Justice Hill one of the best backups if the lead got hurt is because I think somebody would split with Justice Hill. It's the whole like when you're asked to be the bell cow, you're not as good because of the style of running back you are. Are we worried that that might be the case with Dowdle?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good case there. I don't ever I'm not sure he's ever gonna get like 20 touches. Like I just the way
But
that
he got 15.
Yeah, he could get up there into the 15 touch range. He probably has to score a touchdown to make it worthwhile. I was thinking about buying low on him actually 2 days ago. I was looking for some running back help, and I'm thinking that he won't cost a whole lot. And then I looked, and I was just like, ah, man, Pittsburgh this week, Detroit next week, and then the bye week 7, and then out of the bye he has San Fran. So it's like it doesn't look good. The one thing I'll say is that
Down the stretch,
the stretch is really solid. Like week 12, Washington, then the Giants and the Bengals, then Carolina. Like that is really good. So you could maybe get him for cheap this week. You could maybe hang on a couple more weeks. This is what we just talked about. What if he balled out against Pittsburgh and Detroit? It's like, oh man, you missed that buying window. But yeah, I would that one. I would try to. You could get him super cheap, and if you need running back help, and you can just get him where
if you can throw him on your bench.
To start him. Yeah, that's
and
what
you're not losing a starter.
You start him this week. You get him as your 4th. He could turn out to be something down the stretch of the season if they can figure out this run game against easier opponents where they're not, having to chuck all the time. They're healthier on defense. But I think Dallas is in a really tough spot right now, and it could get ugly for them for the next couple of weeks.
On the flip side of it, so this is why they would be crazy if he balls out. The Steelers are actually leading the league in stuff percentage at 51.1%. Over half the time they're stuffing the run, 0 or negative yards. On the flip side of this one, to talk real quickly about the Steelers, after the Browns did nothing against the Cowboys in week 1, passing-wise, do you want to know how insane they've been in the last 3 weeks? Now, granted, 3 weeks is a small sample, but teams are averaging 2.48 yards per route run, 2.5 yards per route run against the Steelers, or against the Cowboys. Second closest, the Rams are at 1.9. I don't know why I said 9 like that, but like that's how big the gap is. So George Pickens, top 15, and while we're here, were you selling George Pickens just on the rumor as we're doing this podcast from Josina Anderson that the Steelers are in play for the Adams? Like, because when we talk about torpedoing value, that would destroy Pickens.
It would, and I wouldn't love it for Adams. Like, I'd love it for the Steelers.
Ruin both of them.
Yeah, like good for the Steelers, and
like at least if he goes to the Jets, he ruins Garrett Wilson, but he's still fine. Like,
yeah.
You would
I think there's a lot of talk on our Slack, and of course, Jeff throws out the teams with the cap space, and I say caps made up, and if a team really wants them, they could figure it out.
Like, it's a lie.
Yeah. The Saints have no cap space. The Chiefs have no cap. Listen, they could get it done if they want to get it done. Yeah, it would really. I wouldn't sell high. I would just. I mean, you could, but then it could bite you. The trade maybe that doesn't happen. And I like Pickens. Like I think he's a wide receiver 3. He's going to have some big weeks. But you mentioned the third down targets, and really Fields is only throwing the football to one guy. Essentially, and they're going to get into some tougher matchups where he has to throw the football a little bit more. So I like Pickens. You know what would be fun for football in real life? Devontae Adams going to Washington would kill the McLaurin as well, and his value. Like it wouldn't be great for fantasy, but it would be like,
fun for real life.
It would be super exciting for everybody. Washington is back. Jaden Daniels has a guy like Devontae Adams. It would be.
I'm surprised. I think this is the first time a big name wide receiver has been floated out there, and people haven't been like, put him on the Ravens. Like, remember, like everybody was always want to put everybody on the Ravens. It's like,
so they don't. Alex Blickle said that in the chat yesterday, and Jeff
put him on the Ravens.
That would be fun. Like, put him on the Ravens, and Jeff was like, "Why would that be fun? This team just runs the football. They don't throw to Flowers as it is. Why would they?" And he's just talking about the concept. Like, just imagine, like, you have Lamar and you have Adams and you have Henry. It's like, yeah, but like we want Adams. We want to free Devontae Adams. We want this guy to get some targets and some
lock him down to a whole whopping 3.5 targets a game. Yeah. All right. So as we get out of here, I'm going to throw a couple numbers at you for this Saints-Chiefs game, and you basically can kind of tell me if any of them matter to you, because we know Xavier Worthy is in play as a sleeper, and not just because no Rashee Rice, but like could have some big shots against the Saints. And on the flip side, Chiefs defense has been really good in spots. But here are the numbers that I found with this to kind of like back up some things we talk about. So one thing is no running backs topped 46 yards against the Chiefs so far. They're the third lowest allowing explosive runs. They've actually been really good against the run that people haven't been paying attention to because that included a game against the Ravens. So let's put that out there. The Saints, on the flip side, allow the lowest touchdown per drive percentage in the league. Again, who they face. Second closest is the Broncos. But at the same time, the Saints are actually really susceptible to chunk receptions, allowing over 9 air yards per target and 12 receptions of 20-plus yards. So good run defense Chiefs, good touchdown defense Saints, open to chunk plays. Do any of those three things matter for you thinking of start-sits matchups this week for the Saints-Chiefs game?
Yeah, I mean, those numbers do matter. I like hearing them moving forward. But even in the tough spot, I mean, like Kamara, right? Like I've been ranking like our 2 and 3. We're starting Kamara. I still think he'll be fine with like those checkdowns.
But what does this make you think of Shaheed and Worthy specifically? For
Shaheed, I do like Olave this week. I think he will see Duffy. I think he will be. I would imagine that's the matchup. I'm fine with rolling out Shaheed because the Saints are. The one thing about Carr is, and we've known this for Carr for a while. People say he turns into a pumpkin with pressure, which he'll get that. He certainly had that against the Eagles, and he'll get that against the Chiefs, but. They want to run the play action. They're running the play action more than anyone. They're running a lot of motion. They want to establish the run with the offensive line. It's taking a hit. Like losing McCoy, and a lot of people will say like, oh, McCoy's a big loss, but like he is a big loss to that offensive line, and he's out 6 to 8 weeks. And that offensive line was playing really good for the first few weeks of the season with Fuaga on the line as well. But they want to run the play action, and they'll take some shots. They're going to take some shots down the field, and Shaheed's going to get one of the two of them. And that's enough for me to want to put him in my lineup. I'm comfortable playing with Shaheed every week. It's not on the same level as Jameson Williams. I like him. I think he's just got more talent. But Shaheed is like I would consider him over Tyreek Hill. Just hoping you get that deep shot down the field.
I have him ranked over Tyreek Hill, so
yeah.
Because they their pass defense hasn't been as good as their run defense, and unfortunately you have to start Kamara. But on the flip side, as we get out of here, Kareem Hunt, is he a must start? Because the touchdowns per drive, like the Saints aren't like great against the run, but they are good at they are stifling drives. Yeah,
they are. I don't know where you have him, but I have him as like a borderline top 15 running back. Maybe I'm a little bullish.
I have him 19. I have him sandwiched before. Then this is one of the ones we're gonna like let the projections kind of tell me. Right now, I have Ford in front of him. Again, this to go back to that, I think I started to talk and say this, and then I completely sidebarred in our discussion, but. Jerome Ford, I'm hoping that the Commanders don't have issues, like having success against the Browns. Because if so, Jerome Ford should be able to do his thing, especially in the but if they're in control, if the Browns are up 17-3, we could see more Deonta Foreman, and that would annoy the crap out of me. This is why I want to get the hell away from this backfield. I want to get the hell away from them, hell away from the Raiders. I'd love to get the hell away from the Bears, but unfortunately, it feels like DeAndre Swift is a start. Mostly because of the matchup, and watch him face plant for us. Watch Kenneth Walker and DeAndre Swift face plant and finishes like wide receiver running back 40s this week. It's so miserable.
The Swift, it could happen to both of those guys, but yeah, I would say it's more likely to happen for DeAndre Swift this week than it is for.
And you'll be happy as we get out of here. It doesn't matter for Thursday Night Football because it's already happened for a lot of people that have listened to it at this point. But Cade Otton. Tight end 13, Meaney. There you go. He almost made tight end 1.
Let's go. And you a big 0 for Cade Otton. Nah, he's going to be more involved, man. He's going to be.
I have a sandwich between Ertz and Parkinson. So there you go. And in front of Kmet and Conklin and Gesicki and Mark Andrews way down at 18. And if his name was Mark Stephalopoulos, he would be not even ranked.
No, he wouldn't be ranked at all. He'd be like tight end 45. It's wild, man.
Make sure you check out Chris Meaney at Chris Meaney. Hockey is here and starting, so make sure you're checking him out. And Dangle Bet Ciely. I got it right. The first time this year, I got it right. I know I got it right. And the great EY, Eric Young, joins him as well over at FTN. All the tools, a lot of these numbers and things, find out over there. So if you check that out, the column is over at The Athletic. And as you can see, answer all the comments, even when, I don't know, I know Meaney didn't read through my column because he might have said something off the top. Yes, I was late getting on my answers yesterday in comments because I have hernia. Yay! So another surgery for 2024. We're out of here. See you later. Have a good one. Cut me off.